So here I'm on Photoshop. I have this template where basically I use every day to apply the posters, and basically this is my artwork where I work and I create the final product. So for this case, I already have created this, but you can go to image size, and the dimensions I use are this. You can create a different file. For example, you go to File, New, and create a new one. Make sure still the color is on RGB. And yeah, so I'm gonna apply in here the gradient, the design we did on Illustrator before. So I'm gonna go on Illustrator again. I'm gonna select with this tool. I'm gonna select this and copy it with Command C on Mac and Control C on Windows. And I'm gonna go back to this document and I'm gonna go edit, paste, or you can just do Command V or Control V on Windows. So when I paste here, this is asking me if I want to paste it as a smart object or pixels. I would go with pixels, not smart object, because it's just gonna make the Photoshop get really busy, and like we cannot apply many things on smart object. So let's go with pixel and here. So you can stretch this, make it big, up to you, but for this scenario I'm just gonna stick with this size and go click OK. So here on the right side, as you can see, I have different layers. One is the background, and one layer here is the design we made previously on Illustrator. So basically what I'm going to do now is go and grab a circle shape. Make sure you hold Shift and start drawing a circle. And basically the color it's gonna apply it on this, it's gray, since this is the default color I have here, but you can change the color by double clicking on this eclipse layer and change the color. But in this case we don't actually really care about what color the shape is, because we're just gonna drag this design on top of this layer, and then we're gonna apply this as a mask above the circle. So you select the layer one and right click and go create clipping mask. So as you can see, the design we did before, the gradient, it's applied above this circle. So everything is fit inside the circle shape. So in this case, you can select the layer one and drag it around, and you can see that that's kind of masked behind the circle. So what I'm going to do next is, as I have this, I'm going to just experiment a little bit with it and like get into a point where the colors look nice. I think here we can see most of the colors, like the yellow, the orange, the blue, the turquoise we did previously. And yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to warp this around. But before we do that, we don't know how it's going to end up. So I recommend you do a copy of it. So you select the eclipse layer, and then you press and hold Shift and select also the above layer. And from the keyboard, you press Command J on, no, yeah, J on Mac, and then Control J on Windows. So as you can see, that makes that all these are grouped in one layer. So let's say this is the design, and what I'm going to do now is duplicate this folder where basically inside are the two designs. You right click here and you go duplicate group, and let's call this design 2. And as you can see, we have two folders with designs inside, but for this one, the second one I created, I'm just gonna right click and go with merge group. So now it's one layer, it's not grouped. You cannot edit that anymore. That's why we created a copy of it. So in any case we want to go back, we still have the other folder. So I'm just gonna press on this I in here so that disappears. So only we have this layer. So yeah, this is something close to the final, but what I'm going to show you now is like a technique called warp. So on Mac, you press Command T, and you can see this, I don't know, like a rectangle that is selected. So basically with this, what you can do is like change dimensions. But in this case, we want to right click in here and go to warp. So what warp does is that it kind of gives you the ability to stretch this around. So for example, if I drag it and do this, you can see that this object is kind of stretching. So in this case, what I do is like, I go with something like this. So we want to replicate what I did before on one of the Baugas posters. So in here, I think looks okay. I mean, you can play around with this. You can even duplicate this, and after you're done with that, you just press the OK sign above. Sorry, I pressed that immediately. But as you can see, this is the gradient we created previously. We changed the shape of it. So what I like usually to apply to this gradient is some sort of noise. So they're like more smooth, especially when you want to get them printed. So you go to Filter, Noise, and Add Noise. You can see that some of the noise is applied there, but I think this is too much. So I'm just gonna reduce to, I don't know, maybe 16. I think this is okay. You can play around with this and experiment with it. So yeah, and now you can see that some of the noise is applied in the gradient, makes it a bit smoother, the transition between one color and the other. Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna try to brighten up a little bit the color. So make sure you select this layer and go to Image, Adjustments, and Hue Saturation. And on the saturation value, we just try to increase this a little bit. So you can see that the colors keep burning in a few places. I kind of like that. I don't like that really smooth transition, but sometimes this gives like the effect that the colors are kind of more three-dimensional. So basically I'm going to stick with this color here, but you also can like, I don't know, like play and change the colors with the hue value. But in this case, maybe I'm gonna just stick in here, reduce a bit the saturation. Again, was a bit too much. And yeah, so this is the technique. I mean, this is one of the things you can do with switching through Illustrator and working on Photoshop. But usually I don't leave it like this. I try to apply a few more things. So let's say, let's do something else to this. Like we go and create a new layer. You can see by going here, I created a new layer, and we go to the brush. And on the brush, I put the size some sort of, I don't know, with the keyboard, you can just make it bigger. And I want to get the eye drop. It's found in here. And I want to select maybe this color here. So you see that the color that is active now is this orange. Well, maybe I'm gonna get this yellow here. You can see this yellow, and I go back to the brush and I have different size, and make sure before applying the brush you have selected the layer 2, which is empty, it's nothing in there. So I'm just gonna click in here and go select the select tool, and now this is applied on top of this design we did previously. But this is kind of missing that noise we added before. So I'm going to go again to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and the value is still as we left it before. So I'm just going to stick with it and click OK. Uh, well, at this point you can, I don't know. I mean, this was the technique I wanted to show you and explain to you how I create these gradients. You can experiment more with this with the colors. You can go back to Illustrator and do more crazy stuff. Um, I I personally really like it like this, but I'm just gonna maybe add a few drawings, like more like lines with a brush. So what I'm going to create with Command Shift and Control Shift and on Mac, on Windows, sorry, and Command Shift and on Mac, you can create a new layer. I'm gonna call this strokes, and I'm gonna go and grab the brush tool. You see that it's big. I can make it small. You can go here and just make it smaller. I'm gonna go maybe with 6 or 5. Let's see. I think it's fine. And now let's select with I tool on the keyboard. Let's select this red color. Make sure the stroke layer is selected, and then press the B on keyboard to select the brush and the sizes as I left it before. And let's try to draw a few elements. Like, I mean, you can go and do many things with this, but I kind of like this. It's like giving it more touch, like different feel to the whole design. I'm going to create a new layer, Command Shift N, and I'm going to get the color, and maybe I'm going to go with something like white and go back with B to the brush and start applying some white again. So I think this is usually what I do, and this is something I work on Photoshop on how to create these shapes. You can just play around more with this, and I don't know, like right click warp, and you can make more like different shapes. I don't know. You can play around with this, but I guess the idea of the whole tutorial is that I'm going to show you the technique, and you can play around with it and create more unique stuff. I wouldn't recommend that you make something similar